Good evening. Welcome to Café Muse. Thank you to Michael Davis for sharing his classical guitar with us. And thank you, Henry Crawford, for your technical wizardry. We're almost entirely wireless here tonight, which is a new innovation. I'm Luther Jett, and I'll be co-hosting this evening along with Majda Gama. Tonight's featured readers are Holly Karapetkova. Holly has given me the thumbs up sign that I pronounced her name correctly, and Stephen Leyva. I will be introducing Holly while Majda will introduce Stephen. The readings are going to be followed by a brief open mic. For those of you who are here physically in the Writers' Center, if you want to read, the sign-up sheet, if you haven't signed up, is in the back on the back table. We'll get to as many as we can given our time limitations. And we ask those of you who are in this room physically to please silence these. Let the words of the poets, whether they're written on the subway walls or not, be the only things that ring in this room. And for you tuning in on Zoom, if you've got trouble hearing us, use the closed caption feature. You look for a gray box at the bottom of your screen. It's labeled CC. Click it and then choose Show Subtitles. Closed captions will appear at the bottom of the screen. We take no responsibility for the accuracy of the captions. We've muted your microphones so that if you have a dog or a laughing child in the background, it won't interrupt the program, that you can use the chat feature to comment. If we encounter a technical glitch, hang with us. We'll be right back. We're encouraging everyone to buy our poets' books. For those in the live audience, the books are already on the back table and will be available for purchase after the reading. For those on Zoom, we're going to put a link in the chat that will send you to the site where you can place your order. Café Muse is a nonprofit organization with an all-volunteer team. We encourage you to donate to Café Muse in support of its literary programs. A donation link will be put in the chat also. Now let me introduce, let's make sure I can really pronounce your name, Holly. Holly Karapetkova is the author of 3 books of poetry. Most recently, Dear Empire from Gunpowder Press. It was a winner of the 2025 William Meredith Prize and the Barry Spacks Poetry Prize. Her earlier books included Towline from Washington Writers Publishing House and Words We Might One Day Say from Cloudbank Books. She is the Poet Laureate Emerita of Arlington, Virginia, and recipient of an Academy of American Poets Laureate Fellowship for her work with young poets. She teaches at Marymount University. Dear Empire offers a searing, truthful look at our nation's complicated history as we continue to confront a legacy of institutionalized racism and white supremacism, and we struggle to overcome that past and fulfill the promise upon which this imperfect union was founded. E. Ethelbert Miller says that Holly's poems describe an American mirror we should not turn away from, and he adds there is always goodness at the center of her work. Terry Ellen Cross Davis credits Holly for offering a serious, ambitious excavation of white witness. Holly grew up in the South. I myself grew up below the Mason-Dixon line, and I have memories of segregated doctors' offices, amusement parks, and movie theaters. That unwanted legacy still casts its shadow even here near our nation's capital. I've read Holly's book several times now. Each time I am struck by her blistering honesty. In Without Sanctuary, Holly describes photos and postcards of lynchings in which white faces crowd in to watch. I cannot see their features clearly enough to know I am not among them. There's no words you can whisper, Holly writes in Power, A Brief History. No word that I won't simmer to a vapor. No flag you can wave that isn't already flaming against my sky. Holly's book was published last year, which means most of the poems therein were written before the inauguration of the current regime. But how sadly prescient these words seem now. Tell me things aren't as bad as they seem, she writes in Dear America. Tell me when La Migra pounds on the door and drones swarm the sky like birds of prey. They leave no bodies behind. Tell me only the map is darkening, only the sun passing behind a cloud. Please welcome Holly Karapetkova.
Thank you so much, Luther. That was beautiful. I read at Café Muse like over 10 years ago. I think it was like in 2015. And I cannot remember the name of the gentleman who introduced me, but he also gave me the most amazing introduction. So you all do fantastic introductions. And I'm so excited to be here with you all tonight and with you on Zoom. I'm a huge fan of Café Muse. I'm usually on Zoom because it's not easy for me to get here from Arlington on a weeknight. But I am really happy to be here in person with you all tonight. As Luther said, this book of mine, Dear Empire, speaks truth to power in all of its forms: white supremacy, patriarchy, xenophobia. And it's a little over a year old, and I was hoping it would not be as relevant as it is. So I'm sorry to say that the poems are so relevant to our current situation. It's been a very dark couple of years, and I just want to say thank you all for being here. I think community is so important right now, and poetry and the arts are so important. I was at a friend of mine, Sean Murphy's book launch last week, his virtual book launch, and he reminded me of Shelley's poem, Ozymandias, that beautiful poem about the ruins of an ancient empire, right? And look on my works, ye mighty, and despair, says the text at the bottom of the statue, and nothing remains. It's all ruins, right? But we remember the poem. The poem survives more than empires. So that was a really wonderful thing to be reminded of. So I wanted to share that with you all tonight. I'm going to read a few poems from my book, and then I'll read a couple of new things as well. And I've got my timer set, so I want to be very respectful of time. This first poem is the first poem in the book, and it's called Genesis. And I was raised in a very religious, conservative household, and I am neither of those things. But it's part of who I am. This is called Genesis. Like any mother, I lived for my children. Bone of my bones, gave them my body as house, gave them my house as home. I was fruitful. I multiplied. Nothing was ever my own, and I called this sacrifice, devotion. What I called them became their names. Some grew and some did not. Some were angry and some were not. Some murdered, some tended the flocks. Some built boats to escape the flood. Some built towers into the sky. Some became pillars of salt. I fed them by the sweat of my brow. Some needed more than I could give them, though I saved only thorns and thistles for myself. God was a voice in the sky with no tree to burn. God was a shower of sulfur, a snake winding through the dirt. If I had a moment to spare, I might have bent to hear what he was saying. Thank you. And this next poem is called Bad Parenting. It is nonfiction, but I want to reassure you, my children are now 15 and 21, so they did survive. Out back, smoking a cigarette below the window where no one can find me. The children are calling, "Mommy, where are you?" But when are they not asking for me? In the cold, my breath rises like smoke, even when I don't take a drag. The children are beginning to worry. The 7-year-old yells louder. The 2-year-old starts to cry. It's only a matter of minutes before they think to look for me here, but I need every minute I can get to figure out what happened to my life, sort through the details of this accident. The fur still lodged in white bumper paint, and the sound of muscle meeting metal, then dashing off into the night. Yep, I promise they're okay. My husband traveled a lot when my kids were younger, so I had a lot of moments of single parenting desperation. That was just one of them. This next poem is called Spotting the Whale, and this is one that I almost threw away. I'm a really bad judge of the quality of my own work, and this is a poem that I was just going to toss, and then I, on a whim, sent it out, and it was accepted, and turned out to be a lot of people's really favorite poem. It's also nonfiction. Spotting the Whale. I have lived where whales live, off the southern tip of an island, just beyond the shore of a peninsula. I have taken boats far on the water, stared hours into the sunset, waves rippling out before me, gentle as a furrowed field, or large enough to knock a fishing boat under, and never have I seen a whale, not one round roll of a head, not a single spout blowing salt water into the air. My eyes follow every white patch in the current, every black break in a ripple, always just a trick of shadow, a large fish too close to sunlight. "Whale!" someone shouts from the other side of the ship, but by the time I reach the stern, it has disappeared. You'll say I don't know what I'm looking for, though I've watched 100 films, read every book with the name, still unable to spot what swims beside me, beneath me, so close I could call it familiar. And this next poem is called "Was He Good to His Slaves?" on a tour at Mount Vernon. And apparently this is a quote that's heard quite often. I have friends who work at Mount Vernon. And it is a quote that I heard on my tour. The question hangs in the air of the new room by the mirror on the wall. The guide has heard it before, like cherry trees and wooden teeth. He explains the acts of resistance and attempts at escape without missing a beat. The tall looking glass, however, is original and was purchased from a French envoy's estate. We watch ourselves walk past it as we are told Washington must have watched himself dancing centuries ago. I imagine his reflection, father of a nation, mouth closed to hide his teeth, which were made not of wood, but of ivory, cow teeth, slave teeth. The teeth were paid for. The slaves were paid for, property passed down with all of its issue and increase. Out on the lawn, the sun is setting low on the horizon. We squint our eyes against the light shining us straight in the face. It's impossible to see ahead, though anyone coming from the other direction must see us clearly, all our colors lit. Thank you all. I had the enormous pleasure of participating in a fundraiser for memorializing the enslaved in Arlington about 2 weeks ago now with Terry Ellen Cross Davis. And in Arlington, we are one of, I think, only 3 locations in the country. We are setting up stumbling stones to commemorate people who were enslaved in Arlington, who basically built the city that we live in. And so you can find out like who was enslaved in your neighborhood, and you can sponsor a stone. It's really fascinating that we have that kind of archival history, that we're able to do that. But we have a lot of records, and I encourage, like, wherever you live, I encourage you to talk to somebody to see if you can figure out how to make this happen, because it's a really amazing way to keep our history alive in this time of erasure. And so that was a really wonderful experience to be part of that fundraiser. I'm going to read a couple of new poems. I've got a couple of poems that are coming out in Gargoyle, and I'm probably not the only person in here tonight who loves Gargoyle. It's one of my favorite contemporary lit mags. And I've had a lot of really nice, I've been lucky to have a lot of really nice publication credits in my writing career, but I feel like most of my personal favorite poems have all ended up in Gargoyle. Thank you, Rick Peabody. And this poem is called Dear America. It's very much in the vein of the Dear Empire poems. This poem is not about you. It's about what lies in your wake. Hot air, late summer sun, and boats cruising the Potomac. A question of passage. The river is not yours, and the grass along the shoreline is not yours, though you staked your claim with boxes of muskets, awls, and socks. You, who could never take no for an answer, who see yes tagged on every body, every plot of land, everything for the right price, your price. Once a body could travel as far as its feet could carry it. Once there were no fences, no toll roads, just a long trail flattened between the trees. Anacostions, Nacotchtank, Patawomek, Piscataway. This river doesn't belong to you. It belongs to no one, an ocean. But there you go, ramming your speedboat against the current, forcing waves of the banks until my kayak lists, unhinging the horizon from the sky. And this poem is called All Aboard, and it has a quote from one of the most brilliant minds of the 20th century, James Baldwin. I imagine one of the reasons people cling to their hate so stubbornly is because they sense, once the hate is gone, that they will be forced to deal with pain. I feel like that's the motto of the 21st century as well as the 20th century, unfortunately for all of us. All aboard. Take the train from one city to the other, this freedom your birthright, white arms waving from the window. From inside the train, you can't see what you're passing over, only what you're passing through. The train picks up speed, the trees and buildings blur, but there's nothing to worry about. It isn't your body tied to the tracks. The whiskey burns your cheek where you bit through, but it's better than thinking. Order another. Learn to take for granted what breaks so you can keep going. Another round of shots. Shotgun means ride up front, coach gun on your lap to kill the hostile natives. Everyone around you is drunk, waving their white arms. The planet is burning, but if you don't think about it, you don't have to acknowledge the pain. You hear someone calling after you, but don't look back. Don't ever look back. There is such thing as invisible damage. Invisible because you don't see it. The air opening like a door to take you through. And I don't usually read brand new stuff, but I actually had the day off today. It's Easter Monday, and I teach at Catholic school, so we didn't have class today. So I spent the day like looking back through. I don't write a poem a day. I did write a poem a day during COVID, and it was a great way to keep myself sane. I don't do it anymore because I don't have the time, and also because I ended up with a whole lot of really bad material. That was just like pounds and pounds of like all of these poems, and I didn't know what to do with them all. And so I kind of slowed that down, but I still write like a couple poems a week. And most of them are complete garbage, but I found a couple that I wanted to share, especially the poems from this year so far, pretty bleak. A lot of fascism, a lot of ICE, a lot of war, a lot of AI. The saddest poem was like, you tell yourself it can't get any worse, and then it gets worse. It was a 2-line poem. I've stopped telling myself that. There's no point, right? But this poem is called, so these are brand new. This poem is called This Is How It Happens. The earth shifts so slightly you don't feel it, or you do feel it, but you assume it's just a large truck on the highway that runs past your house, or you do hear it, but you convince yourself it's just the washing machine spinning in the basement, though you know you haven't done a load of laundry in over a week and it's piling up in a soft heap on the basement floor. You forget you felt anything and go about your day, teaching classes, answering emails, picking children up from school, putting frozen pizza in the oven, turning the television on and off. Not the news, never the news, too depressing, too obvious. You'd have to acknowledge what is happening. You'd have to stop scrolling those dog videos you love for several seconds, look up from your phone, see the masked men charging into suburban streets that look just like yours, that tsunami moving toward you, the avalanche starting down the mountain, mudslide and ground cracks, all the hazardous materials let loose, electricity poles cracked and fallen, roads upheaved like ribbons, your country in ruins. You look away. You try to pretend that you don't know what's coming, that you don't know it's coming for you. And then, of course, there's the Epstein files. And anyone, especially, we women looking at these young women who were trafficked, we can't help but envision our own young selves and maybe similar experiences that we went through or could have gone through. And so this poem is called A Fairy Tale in Lieu of the Remaining Epstein Files. And it has an epigraph from Charles Perrault, who's basically the Grimm brothers of France. He collected a bunch of fairy tales, and he added a moral onto Little Red Riding Hood. From this story, one learns that children, especially young lasses, pretty, courteous, and well-bred, do very wrong to listen to strangers. And it is not an unheard thing if the wolf is thereby provided with his dinner. A fairy tale in lieu of the remaining Epstein files. A girl alone in the woods is always in danger. The woods are full of wolves. The clock strikes out the hour of repentance. We blame the girl, always blame the girl, never the wolf, who is just doing what wolves do, silently stalking the prey, top of the food chain. All bodies are his to do with as he pleases, with his big nose, big hands, big teeth, ugly as the world that bred him, fed him on the bodies of the vulnerable, sinew and fat that taught him kindness was a weakness. Kindness could be death, light slipping between the cracks, truth slipping between the pages. She was only a girl. How could she have known? And here you are, slipping from one story to another, telling the tale of the wolf as though it were your own. And I'm going to read another new short one that's coming out in Poet Lore. We're at the Writers Center, so I wanted to share this one. It's called Anorexia Mirabilis, and the context is I teach a class on poetry and spirituality, and we read a bunch of female mystics from the Middle Ages in Europe, and many of them were what we would today call anorexics or cutters, but they were seen in a very different way. Anorexia Mirabilis. I know where their visions came from, those mystics of the dark ages, when books were gilded in gold. They lived on water, starved themselves for God, and thus were rewarded. delirium, electrolyte imbalance, visions of the virgin who is not really a virgin, the impossible woman's body. What other choice did they have but to stop being women and become something else entirely? Vehicles of prohibition, pure souls in love with lack. 1,000 years later, the same light shines on us today, the same sun. And I got one more. I'm going to close on a funny one, sort of. Funny for me. I'm not very funny, but I try on occasion. And this is called Zombies. It's about my son when he was 3. He's now legal drinking age. It's terrifying, as the poem. My son is afraid of zombies. He runs into my room at night. They're going to eat my brains. They'll come in through the window while we're sleeping and eat our brains. Don't worry, I tell him, zombies don't exist. But what if they do? They don't. But maybe they do. They don't. But maybe they do. We walk through the house together, checking each door and window. Everything's latched tight. See, I tell him, no way zombies could get in. He is not convinced. I dig out the water we brought back from the sacred spring where pilgrims wait in line to be healed. I sprinkle it on his head, make crosses on his wrists. He's satisfied and falls asleep. I stay awake, hear insects scraping their wings against the windows, leaves shifting beneath the empty sky. I spread the sacred water by each window, each doorstep, watching. What is there in the darkness is always looking in, dead-eyed and hankering for flesh. I watch it walk, arms raised, almost human. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Holly. Your poems are, well, I love the new ones just as much as the ones that you read from your current book. I mean, they're vital, timely, unfortunately, as you said, but they're also poems of conscience. I appreciate them so much. My name is Majda Gama, and I'm going to introduce our next featured reader, Stephen Leyva, who I've long admired for his intertextual weavings of Black history, cities, and African American culture. His voice is unique, and his way with language is rich. The opposite of cruelty brings us this voice deftly housed in poetic forms such as odes, American sonnets, and double sonnets, as well as free verse. The opposite of cruelty is a textual disruption of poetic norms that is lyrically sonic and begs to be read aloud. In the long poem Halo, a Corona pastoral, the city of Baltimore is evoked through lines such as, "A porch lights across a cheek like a borrowed Zippo, flash and then gone with the scent of faux Chanel, amen." And "The dead stars hang like a DJ's poster saying, coming soon." The Gen Xer in me loves the mentions of X-Men, Chuck Taylors, slap bracelets, Thundercats, nerd culture in general. But these poems center many worlds and timelines together in a way that feels like a heroic journey of old. And it is a pleasure to follow Stephen's mind wherever it goes, especially when it dwells in meditation and asks, what name does the sculpture give to the clay when it lives in the kiln of a closed mouth? Stephen Leyva was born in New Orleans, Louisiana, and raised in Houston, Texas. His poems have appeared in Smartish Pace, Scalawag, Poetry, Nashville Review, Jubilat, The Hopkins Review, Prairie Schooner, and Best American Poetry 2020. He's a Café Fellow and author of the chapbook Low Parish, and author of the Understudies Handbook, which won the Gene Feldman Poetry Prize from Washington Writers Publishing House. His second book of poems, The Opposite of Cruelty, was published by Blair Publishing in spring 2025. Stephen holds an MFA from the University of Baltimore, where he is an associate professor and co-director of the Klein Family Center of Communications Design. Please welcome Stephen to Café Muse.
Thank you all so much. It's a pleasure to read at Café Muse again. It's been a few years since I read last, and the welcome is just as warm. The introductions are just as good. So I'm just really thrilled to be here with all of you. I'm going to read a little bit from The Opposite of Cruelty. I'm going to read one poem from the Understudy's Handbook, and then I'll read some new poems as well. This is the first poem in The Opposite of Cruelty. A poem avoiding its own tour of force. I could begin with the slate roof of sunset the smog has given us, or the low growl in the throat of a window, the AC unit exasperated. I could begin with the cold color of gunmetal, the aria of the bullet. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. I could begin in ocean, the gray headstones of dead coral, the only grave markers. Or approach the starting line of seashore, the eye is colonized first. Or fire the ceramics in our language. What name does the sculpture give to the clay when it lives in the kiln of a closed mouth? I could enunciate fear not better than any angel and begin with the gray snow on a rose bush, the promise of color. I could begin with the wheat we sow in ether or the menagerie of jailed poets, pen, pen, pen. I could begin in doubt, true to our God, true to our native land. I could begin in error. I don't care what anyone else thinks. I could begin where I will end, in Ithaca's so gray that one speaks their name, Baltimore will be the only word anyone hears. I could praise the present tense and begin again. I could condition this vow, I will not love anyone else, but instead begin to hum in your ear, reader, lover, gray stranger. So hopefully after that poem, we are no longer strangers. And maybe some of you recognized some lyrics from the Black National Anthem that are in that poem. It's a pleasure to celebrate National Poetry Month with Holly, who's been a dear friend of mine for a long time, and with all of you. I want to read a self-portrait. There are several self-portraits in the book, along with sonnets and odes. And this is self-portrait as insect song. I've lived as a cricket on the follicles of graves in ruined gardens. I've sat and sang before leaping into autumn's patchwork air, and it hasn't made a bit of difference. I own a yard and small house with a basement invaded by crickets. Some folks see a vacant home and treat it the same as an unmarked grave. Any fool can tell the difference between the cricket's mating and a police siren. I am sure crickets do not conjure continuously the particular scissors of a bluebird's beak or what it might be to live forever perched and afraid without being eaten. Not everyone is an egg on a ledge. The egg of a police siren, grateful for its bramble of color, hasn't any ordinary black snake to make its nest ruinous. And still, the air suffers its song. Nature cannot commit to its own savagery. Here's a double sonnet instead of an introduction. This is the poem that begins the second section of The Opposite of Cruelty. Instead of your name, the barista writes Eden, Across the flat white you drink, and you drink hours after the yawn of daybreak has closed its mouth. And what of it? Ere, as you well know, began the new world. Your ancestors shifted the vowels of your surname, and I giving way to Y, the whir of a milk frother. Nearly every continent is in your genealogy. You are black. You come from a Creole so old no one can skin the pear of your first language. The whole of the Gulf rests in your spit. You are Afro-Latino and know so little Spanish. Shame scratches its forehead when you speak or don't speak. 7 great uncles named for conquistador resistors, 2 great aunts named for precious stones, onyx in one eye, jade in the other. You worship differently than your Catholic grandparents. Raised in the tune-up of a black organ, you shout. Your last name derives from Levi. The fricatives of priesthood and Torah are all that are left. Your son can claim one branch of the family tree and see Scotland and Germany. His middle name is Japanese. What even is a race? Confetti after the parade. Night cuts its king cake into dawn, but dawn doesn't arrive. Your mother throws a fistful of nutmeg into the bechamel, but y'all can't stop arguing over what is white. Ode to the letter S, after Iracellus Grimet. This is a fun poem that I always read when I have time to remind us that you can write a poem about anything. And the only thing you need to know about this poem to understand it is the shape and sound of the letter S, which I assume we all know. Ode to the letter S. Split heart. You miracle worker, having the last word, you multiply fish in loaves. Jesus can hardly compete. Boomerang turning back to see the beginning and end of each sentence. S, to say you, I can't escape the hiss of a snake. You will not surely die. You asymmetry passing. Without you, the insistence of every slap lapses. Each sore is so metal. Any steam plays well with others. You slanging letter, you colonizer of C, first of my name, standing in the gap between R, T. So what? Oh is how it would be. We would be telling all the truth, but telling it lant. And nobody seriously wants that. I is what it is because you stick around. Stay tuned, says the sunset. Prince sibilant, sovereign plurality, the slide in glissando. You set of broken handcuffs, you incomplete infinity, you open secret. Holly and I are both teachers, and maybe there's some other teachers in the room or people who have been teachers in one capacity or another. This is a poem I wrote for 2 of my grad school teachers who became colleagues later on when they retired. So this is in some ways for anyone who you know was brilliant in their craft, but never got their due. Post-tenure. For Kendra Kapelke and Steve Mattanley and all teachers. All the anthologies have failed me, and the bookshelves rot. I search them like a mirror searches a face, like a child thumbs a photo album for an echo of you. They are filled with your gifts, but not your names. These shelves can't remember you better than I, and can't know what all teachers sacrifice on the altars of time. What hymn would be enough? What gentle accolade? What quiet monument for poets? The libraries are filled with your students, The inner harbors of the mind are thick with blackbirds. I say thank you, and I mean don't leave. I mumble gratitude and mean rescued. Damn all the anthologies that ever were. Damn their whispers. Damn the good night, the gentle, and the going. Praise the play. Praise the heart's handmade book. Nothing that's remembered ever retires, but praise the rest and the restful. Praise patience. Praise the carpe, the diem, and the ant. Praise every way of looking. Praise the river moving between now and another now, in the stacks of books we will walk through, whispering, teacher, teacher, where are you? Praise the silence as it slants and nods inside my life. Okay, I'm going to read a poem from the Understudies Handbook, which was my first book that was published by Washington Writers Publishing House. And my family sport was basketball, but you can see that I'm about 5'10", and there were no chances for the NBA. Although my son gives me a hard time because we measured ourselves recently, and apparently I'm 5'9", and have been adding an inch, or I've shrunk. I don't know. Shout out to middle age. But this is a poem that has a little basketball in it. It also has my brother in it, and my brother, who's about 5.5 years older than me, to whom this book was dedicated. He was the first person to introduce the arts in my life, and so I'm very, very grateful to him. So this is a poem called Rhapsody, Imagining the Sound and Form of a Dribble. It's written in rhyming couplets. Rapid pace. LeBron fleeced on a drive to the basket reminds me. 8:05 in a small bar, a small town, drinking hard and dry cider alone. I watch a mute television screen flash and shoot, replayed to the clink of clean glasses on the bar. Where are my brother's lashes of bravado, his pantomime of black joy, broad smile, a gleaming shack of teeth? I hear him in a palm slapping the maplewood counter to song, "Get back on D!" But really, that's me shouting at the LEDs. Such a small comfort to remember his voice, exuberant, uncouth, fuller than bellows at a hot forge. The TV's unflinching, of course, in the midsummer buckling heat. Screen after screen where guards meet a center to fight through. Perhaps a law, slight enough, worthy and raw, is to roll towards whatever basket of cold pleasure an evening provides, in a cigarette shared as a stranger lies back in a lingering, smoky smile, to show you've not grown too wild and fat to spark against the flint of another's desire, repentance unrequired, just a smile, though, roll towards whatever cold basket of pleasure a marriage provides, the erotic, familiar, leverage of scent in the sheets, a hint of smile, an elixir bent towards youth, such a small comfort to remember love at all persistent as a 7-foot center crashing the boards after missing an easy layup. Nothing is as large as what is not said to a beautiful woman, a beautiful man, or the comfortable hills smoking themselves in a passionate lightning, or even the well-meaning sun sinking in a basket you can't see, but know, fantastic as it seems, is larger than any cold common pleasure towards which we roll. All right. So I'm going to read a couple of poems that were published in Poetry Magazine back in, thank you. Yeah. It was if I had a little bit more time, I'd tell you an anecdote about the poems well, I'll just tell it shortly. The poems that were published here, I had a former student who called me up really just excited to tell me that she had gotten a poem accepted in Poetry Magazine. And I was just over the moon, just like, screaming on the floor, on the phone. I took a walk in my yard, and the neighbors were aghast because I was so like loud and just cheering for her. And when I got off the phone with her, I said to myself, Stephen, why are you not sending work to them? Why have you convinced yourself that they don't want what you have, or you're not good enough, or whatever it might be? If your former student can do it, why not you? And that week, I sent these poems that were accepted. And so I say that not to toot my own horn, although it is a kind of like, it was a dream of mine. But simply to say that you don't know whether or not you are an inch away from your dreams or a mile. You don't know if it's going to happen tomorrow or 10 years from now. And maybe that's a good thing. Your job is to just do the work. Continue to do the work. And take your shots, because you don't know. You don't know how close you are. How to incorporate a town. This poem and all of these poems, broadly speaking, are set in Oklahoma, and they're from a new manuscript. How to incorporate a town. Against the stain of heat, lightning that cracks a fresco of Oklahoma dusk, add this husk of breath. The lawn, a skeletal color. Any remembrance of robin's egg blue or born again vermilion along the myrtle leaf has sunk into seasonal fable. Arkansas River mud, an odd Valhalla of frogs. An endless scrim of small towns along the Indian Turnpike. Guess, if you can, the name of this opera with an empty libretto. What can be said against the stain of mass relocation that hasn't been said by simply weeping? What phantasmal wheat makes the bread ghosts eat? Slim vials of rain arrive at a place where the plains end their protest of dust, where the late birthmark of Art Deco architecture has grown, where Osage hills assuage Ozark mountains, where the Wild Bunch and Daltons gunned a hole in history, where oil transubstantiates. Add to that rain whatever dignity stains. Wouldn't you know, metaphor is the usual method of incorporating a town. Colonial becomes normative, becomes Norman, Oklahoma, becomes a university, becomes a universal land grant, becomes a honeycomb of dead bees in the apiary of America. Our magnum Regina is a coin over each eye. So magnum Regina is just a way of saying like queen bee in Latin. Not that I'm going to sit here and pretend that I knew that before I wrote the poem. Latin was not something I studied in college or high school, but I did learn it for that poem. I'm going to end with this poem, Limerence. And I just want to say thank you all for being such diligent listeners. And I hope these poems have found a way to bring you into the question that my book tries to answer, which is, what is the opposite of cruelty? And how do we get at an answer without simply saying love or friendship or any other trite phrase that is easy to say but difficult to live? I'm interested in prismatic answers, answers that we can pass a lot of light through so that they fragment and we can see them more clearly. And I hope these poems can be that. Limerence. What do we call this desire to be desired? The milkweed's impenitent bow to the monarch or starlight. The heart's timpani at a sundress a thigh, a braided anklet, a kind word escaping the cocktail glass, an olive in brine. Name it beauty, and chase will become our watchword. Call it love, and the sun will kneel. Say happiness, and do I deserve this? Follows, rapturous, like a sparrow pecking the ground. Instead of wisdom, why not wish for the owl's heart at night, seeing in the dark more than a meal, but a place to sing? Don't imagine a dirge for the eaten. Conjure and exhale instead. The hoot of being alive. Name it, whatever you like. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Stephen. Now it's time for the open mic portion of our evening. And we have 5 people signed up. And hopefully we will get to each of you. The tradition is 1 poem, 1 page. And our first reader is Tim Norton.
Thank you for reading. I enjoyed the poems a lot. I have a few publications, but no book. I'm submitting now. So this poem is called Listening. On any given day, if you listen hard, you can hear a pervasive scream at just the right frequency to agitate us like molecules in a pot of boiling water. The steam forced out is an eruption of judgments, prophecies, and vitriol, where there are as many damned as saved. Each person is their own prophet, and an onslaught replies after every word we speak, until we become deaf and mute against the uproar. With every utterance about it, it seems one's cry joins the charade. There's little left in the stifling pot. On the same days, if you listen carefully, you can hear a sweet melody at just the right tone, like the surface of a still lake with a calm breeze echoing a calm mellifluence. The silence welcomes voices that talk about real things, and the world is distant from the sanctuary by the lake. To enjoy it is to amplify the sound, to let others hear as it soon becomes a symphony drowning out the scream.
Our next reader is Majda Gama.
This poem is called This is a Fish. The way my mother tells it, my first word wasn't a word, it was a full sentence. What I know is I had more to say than could be said with one English word. As I remember it, the first word I spoke in Arabic was la, no. But truthfully, it was Sibini, leave me alone. La was so elegant on paper, looking one way like a sickle as it cut parasitic mistletoe, or the fall of long bones into runes. What I did repeat constantly was the sibilant Sibini, like a devotion. Any tap from behind in the schoolyard, any variation of my name spoken with all its syllables, I'd choke out the letters that I'd practiced writing, tracing them over, then inking them in with a fountain pen, right to left. As the chalk flew from the teacher's hands, as we schoolgirls formed harmonious rows for exercise, as we waved our limbs like swimmers in the watery morning light. Thank you.
Thank you, Majda. Our next reader, David Reed.
This poem is entitled The Sign of the Four, and it's only 22 words, so if you blink, you'll miss it. How often have I said to you that when I have eliminated the unacceptable, whatever remains, however irrational, must be my truth. Thank you.
Phil McQueen is our next reader.
This is called The Building Across the Street. Here, it's just the same as years ago. just as it was in June 1989. Not ugly, just plain. Here, furtive faces looked out from behind curtains, looked out at the thousands of us, little furtive demons peeping from among the drapes. Who recorded us? Which lists were made? Which side were the recorders on? Mine or theirs? Am I on a list of prescribed persons? And by my side or theirs? I've heard the occupants have moved on, but the stain of their slaughter has not. Who is looking now to see what trouble I might bring? The wind rises, it might blow me over the bridge.
And our final reader is Diana Tokaji.
Hi, thank you, Holly and Stephen. That was amazing. My most recent poem, and it's in couplets, and it's kind of a takeoff inspired by Jericho Brown's invention of a duplex, which is couplets where the second line of each couplet is picked up. The end of the second line of each couplet is picked up by the first line of the next couplet. And then the last line of the poem feeds back to the first line. Anyway, I decided to read it because it's still most current in my mind. Dolores. As if my fury-red, broken, ripped-up words could matter, oh Dolores, to anyone abused. I'm saying, who will listen, Dolores, to anyone? My father will die in Sacramento, lobbying for the farm workers, fighting for the UFW. He will pause at the lobby drinking fountain, fighting for his young life. And on my pink cork bulletin board, you will see a button with the word Viva. And on our fridge with bologna inside and no grapes, this flyer, Viva, Viva la Huelga. Remember our drive to Modesto, my dad in support of La Huelga, made me translate his speech and recite it to the strikers in my faltering 8th grade Spanish. Age of Deborah, age of Anna, faltering 8th grade girls who will be molested for years by Cesar Chavez. Now see Dolores Huerta, our hero, our leader, impregnated with sorrows, los dolores, as she parts with her babies born from his rape, as she's living alone with her secret for the benefit of La Causa. See her today at 96, reliving and revealing the truth to the judgment of a million masses, the kind and the cruel judgment of a million Catholic masses. See the shrouding of his title, his statues, the anointed Chavez on our schools, streets, community centers, highways, parks, Chavez on our libraries in Oakland, Salinas, San Jose, Stockton, Delano, Chavez blazing everywhere on every lamppost, on every blazing poster, for every grape rhymes with rape. Chavez, we boycott you, unname you, strike you from the Spanish on our lips, unthroat your ruin from our throats. Oh, Dolores, march with me. Oh, anyone who will listen, as if my fury-red, broken, ripped up words could matter. Whisper, viva, viva, words could matter. Thank you.
Oh, what an amazing night. I mean, that was a moving end to just a beautiful night of poetry. Thank you, Holly and Stephen, for coming down here. Thank you to the brave readers of the open mic. I'd also like to thank my co-hosts, Luther Jett, who's right there, brilliant, Henry Crawford, Michael Davis for the guitar. Thank you to the audience in person and the 30 plus people on Zoom. Thank you for being so loyal, and they were chatting the whole time too. So. Yeah, and my whole team here at Café Muse, Ellen Cole, Claire McGough, as well as our founder, Karen Alanier. Enjoy National Poetry Month as much as you can. They cannot take poetry away from us. We'll be back next month, May 4th, online. We'll feature Carrie Bennett and Dorcia Smith-Silva. Stay safe.